Shwmae a chroeso I Sgwrs, podlediad Consortiwm Canolbarth y De. Yn y podlediad hwn byddwch chi'n clywed y trafodaethau diweddara am bob math o bethau addysg. Hello and welcome to Sgwrs, the Central South Consortium podcast. In this podcast we'll bring you the very latest discussions on all things education.
Knowing every learner and understanding the interrelationship between a school's leadership and teaching and care support and guidance are key to achieving our national mission of high standards and aspirations for all in Wales. Equity requires that we ensure that the system at a school, local and national level takes account of and responds to the unique range of needs, circumstances and backgrounds of individuals and groups of learners. It's an absolute pleasure today to be in conversation with staff from Ferndale Community School in the Rhondda Valley, where we will be discussing how the school supports its pupils in removing barriers to learning, accessing the curriculum and good levels of attendance. I'm joined by the head teacher and other leaders from the school who will now introduce themselves.
Good morning. My name is Nathan Brigorich. I'm head teacher here at Ferndale Community School. I was appointed in January 2020, and about 6 weeks later, we went into lockdown. So it's been a bit of an adventure ever since, I think. Yes, but head teacher here at Ferndale Community School.
Thank you, Nathan.
Gavin Groves, assistant head teacher at the school. I was appointed nearly 3 years ago now. So my remit covers attendance, safeguarding, behaviour and well-being.
Thank you, Gavin.
I'm Nicola Casero. I'm attendance and wellbeing officer and safeguarding. So I probably worked here 13 years, managing attendance and whatnot. So yeah, that's my job.
A long time, Nicola.
A long time.
I'm Louise Lockett. I'm the Family Engagement Officer for Ferndale Community School. I was appointed in September 2020. We didn't think it was going to be for long. It was going to be like a year, but here I am. I'm still here, and yeah, it was. It's been things have changed dramatically since then. So yeah, fab.
Lovely. Thank you, Louise. Okay, so thank you all for your time this morning, and it's a great privilege to be able to meet with you all and gain your sort of story about the successes that you've had at Ferndale. I'd really like to start by asking you about your improvement journey, giving us a flavour of the background and the reasons why you've implemented the policies and systems that you have.
Shall I start there, guys? So
Yes.
I think, if I'm honest, we not that we mention the C word very often now, but COVID was a huge impact in terms of within our community in particular. There was huge levels of anxiety all around the system, both staff, pupils and within families as well. There was a significant amount of deaths that we encountered within our community as well around that COVID time. So we had about 47 different plans, I think, for coming back to school post-COVID, in terms of bubbles, in terms of different entrance and exits, etc. So I think when that anxiety level was huge, and we very, very quickly identified that we had to do something a little bit different in terms of behaviour we were experiencing. That was in terms of learning and teaching, where staff had been asked to teach from the front in terms of 2-metre boxes, and there were masks everywhere. On the point of return to what was called the new normal, I think we realised that there was a huge role that we had to play in terms of creating that confidence, if you like, within the community that it was safe to come back to school, and that we would put support in place for both pupils, for families that were struggling. So I think around that sort of 2021-22 mark, there was a huge amount of, as I've said, anxiety, and a big part in that was us getting out into the community potentially and getting that information out into the community that we had things in place that was going to be safe, and we were going to support those pupils who were anxious and those families that were anxious. So I think that's where, in particular, Louise's role, which was a fairly new role at that point in time. We had Welsh Government funding, which was fantastic from a family engagement officer point of view. But that role at this point in time, I think it was almost changing on a weekly basis in terms of the needs of the community and the pupils. There was a lot of home visits, there was a lot of external visits, and trying to build relationships and providing that confidence, if you like, for pupils to return. So the starting point, definitely, of our improvement journey was that we call it returning stronger from COVID, and the support and the strategies that we needed to put in place from that. Then what we've done is we've constantly refined and constantly tweaked and edited what those strategies look like, responding to the needs and responding to the situation that we've seen. I've talked an awful lot there, so I'll allow Louise or anybody else to come in at that point in time. But I think it's very important that the starting point of the journey is clear as well, and it was that COVID. It was almost a reset, if you like, reviewing what we had in place previously, and a reset almost, and building that confidence and building those relationships are absolutely vital.
Thank you, Nathan. Anything from other colleagues to add to what Nathan has said?
If I just jump in, it was sort of continuing the journey. When I arrived at the school 3 years ago, Ferndale had a lot of these processes, the infrastructure was in place. But in my opinion, it wasn't joined up thinking in terms of where we are. So, for example, attendance, we're almost working separately. The safeguarding, behaviour and heads of year, all the processes were in place, even ALN, everything existed, but they didn't seem to be joined up thinking. So to be honest, there were simple processes we changed straight away from the start, even line management meetings where we joined everything together. So for example, I would meet with Nicola, but also then the head of year would be in the same meeting, and we'd have a wellbeing link as well. So our meetings then obviously focused on attendance, but obviously behaviour and the well-being of those pupils. We were able to exchange stories to find out what's going on with those pupils. We are lucky in Ferndale because we're a smaller school that we can do that we know the families, we know the community a lot better in terms of where we're at. So from that point of view, line management structure, we were able to put things in place, but obviously it has been touched upon behaviour and emotional needs of the pupils. We had certain facilities within school that we could improve, refine, put PSPs and plans in place. So for example, we had T-Cutch, which is our nurture facility that we provided for our pupils. We did have a step 4 provision for alternative learning, pupils who were struggling with mainstream education. And then quite radically then we brought in what's called T-Calon, which is we brought in a primary teacher to try and bridge the gap between those people struggling in primary school into comp. And again, Nathan's mentioned about refining and improving. The need has been so great that at this moment in time, we've actually got 2 primary teachers employed, and we've got 2 T-Calons because of the need of the pupils that they do struggle with mainstream education. So my role, probably since I've come on, is literally to refine that and try and make the improvement. We're working collectively together, because what I haven't mentioned is the massive amount of support in terms of outside agencies, things like CEPs, Eye2Eye, and so on, that we've got in place to support our learners as well.
Thank you, Gavin. Anything else from Louise and Nicola?
I think going back to what Nathan was saying, when I joined in the September of 2020, everything had started, everybody was sort of phased in, staggered in, and obviously we had like that September to the December, and then we went back into lockdown again, and it was like, oh God, you know, we had our year 11s and things like that. So initially we concentrated on working with our digitally excluded pupils. So we were work packs, we were laptops, you know, dongles, because there was lots of these families without internet access and things like that. And just looking, you know, how it's changed my job in the last 5 years, how my role has changed and the journey travelled. It's been interesting, you know. But we are lucky in this school. It is small, we know everybody, we all work, like Nicola and I work closely with regards to attendance and, you know, family engagement, and we sort of bounce off each other, don't we? And when Gavin was saying then about changes that we made with regards to joining everything up, it was just simple. It was like all of us like working from one room, you know, so we were all bouncing off each other, And it's worked, and you know, we're seeing an improvement daily. So yeah, it's good.
Thank you, Louise. Nicola, anything to add?
I do think, as we said about being a small school, but the fact that we're all working together, a lot of us are in one office. So I'm a safeguarding officer, also the main attendance officer. We've got the wellbeing officers working in the same room. We don't really miss anything between us, and we always know somebody's not in school, there'll be a link with the reasons for that. So we got a picture of the whole child, you know, and the whole story and the understanding behind that. So that is really important. Really important. I know, like there's some other schools, you know, they're very separate, and sometimes attendance and well-being are so closely linked to get that understanding of why that child may not be in school, why they can't attend, what problems that they have.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is crucial.
Definitely.
Really crucial.
Thank you for that. So we'll now move on to planning and thinking about the key personnel who have been involved in this strategic approach to improving attendance and engagement, and you know, any use of data to identify target pupils. Nice if you can unpack that and give us a flavour of how you have set about sort of planning this extraordinary feat.
If I can come in from a strategic point of view, we were talking at that point in time, 2020, you know, we were talking 70% attendance, that type of thing. Do you know what I mean? And then when we first came back, I'm talking 4 years ago, we were 82% attendance. So we were starting from a very, very low threshold. So we realised, you know, our previous sort of graduated response, the previous things that we did for attendance when we were working at 90% or 91%, they had to, you know, that wasn't going to work because the volume of the pupils we were talking about in terms of either not attending school at all or having very poor attendance had significantly increased. So what we talked about at that time was things like, and I know it does, I suppose you could say, argue it doesn't directly relate to attendance, but we looked at learning and teaching strategies. We looked at our behaviour strategies and everything because they all interlink, if that makes sense. If we can get a quality learning experience in classrooms, then you've got a better chance of pupils wanting to come to school and go to lessons, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? If you've got appropriate behaviour strategies, then again, you've got more chance of pupils wanting to come to school. So everything we did was very much looked at from a whole school perspective. First of all, what can we do to better the learning and teaching experiences, to improve our behaviour management, and to improve whole school attendance strategies, I suppose. Prior to then, as you've said, drilling down on groups, individuals, etc., and looking at what we could put in place. So I think there was that whole school sort of shift, as well as then the drilling down and the targeting of those specific groups and individuals as well. And what I would say is we were very fortunate during this time to be successful in some external bids from the local authority with regards to step 4 provision. So a lot of the provisions that Gavin's talked about there were initially funded or partly funded by the local authority as well. And we were able to mould those then, I suppose, into specific elements to target attendance or target behaviour, etc. So but it was, you know, we were coming back from a very, very low base, if you like. So it was a combination, I would say, of some whole school strategies, as well as what the guys are going to go into now in terms of those targeted interventions that were specifically focused on individuals and groups then as well.
Thank you, Nathan. I think that's really, really important that, you know, you see the links between, as you say, curriculum, high quality teaching and learning behaviour. It's the whole sort of approach that needs to be considered, and all those different facets. So thank you for that. So moving over to Gavin, do you have anything further to add there, Gavin?
Yeah, it's just to expand on what Nathan was saying. So again, the COVID word comes about, but it was having to go back to redrafting policies, behaviour policies, redrafting teaching and learning policies. And if I'm being honest, the staff needed that reassurance. It was a case of going back to basics again, to tell them what to do in certain situations, what we should do, how things graduate, and so on. So the staff came on board with working parties, with the behaviour policy. The school had already gone through a process of looking at the teaching and learning policy. But what we did is we combined the policies together almost, so that the behaviour policy had elements of teaching and learning in it, and vice versa, so that we were all singing off the same hymn sheet. So that worked massively then in terms of the focus of what education looked like across the school in general, linked with behaviour and well-being. The other side of this was small little changes that we made in terms of facilities, moving certain provisions or certain rooms, so as Nicola said, so that things were more grouped together. And then the opposite of that is actually, as I mentioned, our Step 4 facility, Quieteg, putting that slightly away from the mainstream grounds in a secure area, so it doesn't cause any distraction to teaching and learning across the school. And these are all small changes that ultimately made a difference to ethos across the school, but obviously ultimately attendance as well. The one thing to probably mention is we've been lucky within the school. We've always run a very strong transition program through heads of year, but that's built now in terms of head of year will go, our ALNCO obviously goes, but we put a wellbeing link, would visit all the schools in advance. Louise Lockett would also visit. And what we've built up over the years now is things like with Boxhall profiling pupils before they arrive at the school. We have 1 week's transition where the pupils are actually in our school beforehand. And without the formal and the informal information, we wouldn't have been aware of some of these pupils when they arrive. And that's why it's quite radical that we brought in our 2 TCALON provisions, which are obviously primary teacher based. And we were only able to do that through a successful transition program of knowing what was going to arrive to us in September time. And that's just an example of processes and procedures and strategically planning, to be honest, for the new academic every year. The worrying factor, it will always come back to, though, the scary factor is always down to budget. We have been blessed with some of these funding opportunities we've had, but we've shown the rewards with attendance, with improvements in behaviour, with reductions in exclusions, improved teaching and learning. But it always comes down to money, unfortunately. So that is always the fear factor from our point of view.
Thank you, Gavin. Louise and Nicola, any other additional comments?
No, I think they've
No,
come
that's
to
all right.
go.
No, that's fine. Thank you for that. Okay.
All I'd say there, sorry to cut in again, there's nobody here to kick me under the table now to stop me from talking. But what I would say in terms of, I know we're talking whole school there, but Nicola and Louise, I would say year on year, even almost month on month, a constant refining what we're doing. So we talked about the graduated response that we had in place, and I was here for 6 weeks prior to COVID, but Nicola always was very, very thorough and very, very rigorous with that graduated response. And I think we had a 2-year period where almost things like, the links to the education welfare service, etc., were gone, and those more formal processes then weren't in place, if you like, that ultimately resulted in sort of FPNs. But that's the last case scenario, isn't it? I mean, so the way in which we've reintroduced those, I think, was absolutely key as well, that graduated response, because I think we were one of because I think it was in response to how low our attendance was and how we really needed to impact that as soon as possible. Because if we didn't get attendance up, then you could put whatever learning and teaching or behaviour strategies you wanted to. If the kids annoy you, they can't learn from it, type of thing. Do you know what I mean? So I think Nicola was key, really, and Louise, in terms of consulting and bringing to us what they wanted to do, and that that reintegration from quite an early stage, I would say, post-COVID, with regards to graduated response. So, we follow the local authority processes in terms of letter 1s, letter 2s, and Nicola will be able to expand on this in a far greater detail. But every year, or every time we have an incremental improvement in our attendance, we refine those processes and look at the percentage of or where we targeting that first step, if you like. And I think that has had an impact as well, because the earlier you get that intervention in with regards to attendance is absolutely key. Otherwise the behaviors become learnt, and I think if you can get in early and get that intervention in early, you've got a far greater chance of preventing them from becoming long-term absentees then.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that. Thank you, Nathan. Moving on to the next phase of implementation, looking at how you have put policy into practice, winning hearts and minds not only of the pupils but also family engagement and the wider community, looking at how you've used local businesses and governors. It would be really, really interesting to see your approach with regards to all of those things.
I think for me, with the engagement side of things, obviously being a link to families, it goes back to basics. It's about building relationships. It's having like, you know, you've got some parents where school hasn't been a positive sort of experience for them in the past. They're a little bit, you know, dubious about ringing in, or I don't want to meet, you know, with a teacher, or so I'm sort of the middleman. So like, I've got my works mobile. I always give my works mobile phone number if people need to contact and whatever. So I have a lot of contacts through there, and you know, attend being that advocate really for the parents in school meetings, and trying to say, look, you know, we are working with you. We want this as a positive sort of step, you know, for attendance and engagement really, and just putting across how important it is that we keep that link, you know. But I mean, in the beginning, it was difficult because it was, oh, I can't get him to work in the house. But we moved on from that, where now it's daily. My phone goes, oh, can I speak to you? Oh, can we do this? Oh, I'm coming up to reception. Can I meet with you? I need to talk to you about this. And those relationships have been built. When Gavin was saying about transition, the transition process is very effective. Last year, Gavin and I are doing the Nurture Network. Nurture UK, isn't it? Qualification. So we were looking at our year 6, obviously coming into year 7, because what we were finding was that we'd get so far into the school year from the September, and then issues would crop up then with some children, not all, but some children that hadn't even been identified, perhaps in primary. So we decided then to box all, with the help of the primary schools, to do the box all assessments. So they've been quite good, giving us the what would I say, the tools really, just to think, right, okay, we're able to take this, you know, tackle this head on. We know these problems are going to occur, and therefore we can put plans into place so that we don't lose them at an early stage, you know. Building up from coming back from COVID, you know, all our links have sort of picked back up. We have got great links outside, haven't we, with other agencies. You know, we've Gregor at the minute. He's part of our Shine project, so he comes in as our CAMS nurse, and I've sat in on some meetings with him, and you know, the information that he brings to parents, and you can see him, they genuinely, thank you ever so much, you know, that's great, I'll take this and I'll read it. He's really good. We've got a Save the Children project working at the moment. It's a workshop where the children have worked with the ladies from the project, and they've discussed poverty and how it affects them and young people. And they go into the Senate now in June. So they're going to see the Education Minister. We're going to present all our findings and things like that there. I'll let Nicola talk now because I prattle on all day.
Well, I'll talk more about the actual procedure, because I'm a bit of a stickler. I am quite I'm really consistent in the job that I do. Every fortnight we go through letters that will be sent out to parents, and we look at every child's attendance on a fortnightly basis. So I just keep doing that consistently, and I think that's really important. I've always sort of done that, but since COVID, it was a difficult one for me, because the thresholds changed, and we were looking at certain percentage, and then that was all out to the window. Like we didn't have an attendance target. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing in my job anymore. I don't know what to, you know. It was a strange one, but we gradually started to put attendance procedures that I would normally follow back into place slowly. So for me, you know, obviously I'm working with wellbeing and safeguarding, but then I'm going through the attendance procedures. I follow the graduated response that's recommended by the local authority. I'm quite tight on that.
She's armed with her Bible.
Yeah. You know. So and it's like just sticking to that, because children do need that structure and routine and those expectations. And yeah, it's you know, that's what I kind of do. I
so
follow that graduated response.
Sort of an unrelenting focus on that sort of process and procedure, and yeah, absolutely attention to detail, and
Yeah,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Dog with a bone, Mrs. Or how we describe it, the dog with a bone. But I genuinely think, though, what Nicola said there is the absolute key. There are a number of strategies and whole school things, but that relentless focus on a daily
Absolutely.
basis on those individuals, do you know what I mean, and everybody is absolutely key, and that has been, from as far as I'm concerned, that's been the biggest driver. Yes, we've done other things alongside that, but having that rigorous graduated response has been key. Pre-COVID, you were probably talking on average in secondary schools 93% attendance, not in ours, we were slightly lower. So, you know, if you had a good graduate response, 93% of the kids were in school. You only had that top percentage then that you needed those extra things with. And it's about trying to drive those standards through that graduated response to try and get as many pupils in the building as we can, so that then we can focus on the ones who are struggling. But I would agree with Nicola, and I think she is absolutely right. She's incredibly rigorous, and the team are now. What Gav said is the processes that are put in place now around that graduated response is very, very rigorous. It's absolutely consistent. The parents know it's consistent, the pupils know it's consistent, and staff in the school know it's consistent as well. And I think that is absolutely key. And I think, you know, if we want to talk around then the other sort of promotional campaigns, etc., that we do around that, but those daily procedures, those weekly procedures, those monthly procedures that we know are going to happen without fail, that's key to everything as far as I'm concerned with regards to raising the attendance.
And in a way, I think, you know, when we talk about sort of sector leading practice, I think automatically we go to sort of think, oh, it must be something that's sort of, you know, whiz bang wallop and sexy. But I think I agree with you. Sector leading practice is doing the things that you've just said, Nicola, having that unrelenting focus on making sure that you pay such attention to detail to doing those things consistently well, and they are the things that pay the dividends. And to me, that is sector leading. So I think
and it takes a huge amount of time and a huge amount of patience and commitment, etc.
Yes.
But it doesn't happen overnight. Do you know what I mean? And it's taken us now. It's taken us 4 years, I would say, to see a big improvement. You know, I go back to we started off on 82.5%. We had a little increase then to 82.8% the next year. The following year, last year, we were 84.8%. So we saw a 2% increase then, which we were all delighted with. At the moment, we're running on 87.7%. So as much as we're not sitting here celebrating that in terms of that's not where we want to be, but that is a huge improvement.
Huge effort.
And it's year on year, which for me means it's sustainable as well. I know it's not just a one-off spike. It's been gradual, but now that 3% increase this year is key. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, that shows that we are taking the bulk of the pupils with us again now, which means that we'll have more time and more resources to spend on the smaller percentage of the pupils that need them then as well.
Definitely. Thank you for that.
Just to add to a couple of the points, it's been a balancing act. We are rigorous with our procedures, getting the parents to come in to meet with heads of year, to meet with myself, to talk about things. But it's a balancing act to build up a relationship with them, to get them in for the meeting in the first place, but also to direct the major issues that these people's attendance is not good enough as well. But again, the team, I cannot stress enough how many phone calls, first call response straight away, and everything else. And the pupils and the parents and guardians, they understand what's coming. If the pupils' attendance is a certain point, they know what's coming. And that's helped massively in terms of where we are. The other thing we've looked at based on these meetings is looking at, Louise mentioned it, looking at alternative things for some of our pupils, because mainstream education isn't for everyone. So obviously we've increased our number of work experience opportunities, even college opportunities early and placements and so on, and that's made a massive difference then as well in terms of the buy-in then from the parents, because they understand that yes, we're rigorous with the attendance, but we are looking at what's best for the pupil as well in terms of how we move forward in the future as well, and that's worked really well.
It's been highlighted, as Gav said, we've been, as cluster heads, we've been looking at developing a cluster attendance policy. And obviously it is very different what happens in primaries to what happens in secondaries, you know, in terms of staffing, in terms of specific attendance teams, etc. But the more consistent approaches we've got across the cluster, I think helps everybody. If we're all singing from the same song sheet, so if they know they're not in school, this is what they can expect, whether that's in Darren Park, which is one of our cluster schools, whether that's in Penrhys, in Mardy, in Pontygwaith, in Tylerstown, or whether it's with us. You haven't got that ability then for parents to say, well, they don't do that down there, or little Johnny's not having that up in the secondary school type of thing. So that consistency, I think, is more power to everybody's elbow as well. So that's something we are really focused on, and we work incredibly well as a cluster. They are very, very supportive of us as a secondary school, and I'm always very conscious as well. We are secondary schools are the only ones really that benefit from transition, as well as the pupils, obviously. But so I'm really, really appreciative of the way in which the cluster schools and the cluster heads and the teams, etc., are supportive of us and are on board in terms of what we're trying to do as well.
Thank you.
The other thing, I don't know if we want to pick up now, Emma, the only other thing I'd say is, alongside, I know we've talked about the graduate risk response, which is absolutely key, but we have got then, and Gavin's alluded to, we've got other provisions. So, for example, we've talked about our T-Cutch, which is our nurture provision. But so when we see that there are genuine reasons for pupils, anxiety levels, etc., or anything else, we have got a facility that is a full-time facility that can be used to transition pupils back, sometimes on a part-time basis, sometimes on a gradual basis, sometimes pupils coming out to certain lessons if they're having issues with, and I don't think we can underestimate, in terms of building up that confidence, in terms of reducing anxiety levels, those specific provisions that Gab's talked about in terms of T-Cutch, in terms of T-Calon, for that specifically targeted cohort, that has been absolutely key as well. So you've got your graduate response, if you like, for the whole school and the vast majority of the pupils, but having those individual then bespoke sort of interventions, if you like, is absolutely key as well. And what we try and do then is build those up on a gradual basis and reintroduce them then into mainstream as well. And that's proved, it hasn't been successful with everybody, but we've had a number of successes through that has benefited then whole school attendance as well.
Thank you. That's really, really useful, Nathan. Can I just ask you about any sort of looking at the wider community and sort of businesses and other agencies? Have you forged any links with local businesses to sort of support this agenda?
So the part I am talking about is obviously the reward system. It's linked to the behaviour policy we've got, but it's the reward system. So every half term, we're promoting pupils who've got 100% attendance. There's chances to get rewards in terms of whether it's sweets or Christmas time, we do selection boxes, Easter time, and so on. But what we do is that's not just based on the start of the year. We reset the balance every single time. So every half term, you start again. So it means pupils who wouldn't necessarily have had the opportunity because they've missed 2 or 3 days, the next half term, they've got an opportunity again. And that's the promotion of good attendance, good behaviour, everything. The pupils have seen a massive difference, because initially when I first arrived at the school, some staff were a bit, why are we reinforcing giving extra points for pupils who've turned up on time, are in school and behaved? And it was a case of saying we want to reinforce the good things that are going on across the school. And we've been lucky with our reward shop that we've done that, but also the prize is celebrating pupil success. And we're doing that half term. Now, you said about partnerships. That's where we've built in then with the Fern partnership then. So, for example, Christmas time, we've had donations from the Fern partnership, like TVs and things like that we've raffled. As you're probably well aware, Christmas time, there's a drop in attendance quite considerably normally, but we've had incentives to get pupils in at key times. And we've had things like vouchers from the local Greg shop as well. And this is all trying to promote positive learning, attendance and everything else. So we've had a buy-in from local businesses. And again, I touched upon it already with the work experience. We've got certain companies that have had a number of our pupils over the years now, and that's starting to work well. The only problem where we are, though, from a community point of view, is there's not that many business opportunities for our pupils to be put on placements just because of geographically where we are. But what links we can, we're forever trying to see what else is out there. But that's gone really well, yeah.
In terms of working with parents with regards to the wider community, we've got good links with RCT's Working Skills programme. So they've linked with us, and then we've offered, we did a first aid course and a food hygiene course held on site with those for our parents. and that was really good as well. That was really popular, and they loved that. They engaged really well. And there's also a little it's a church group is just down the road, and they do donations across RCT for families that need clothing donations. So it's not necessarily the one child. What we do then, we link with the ladies, and they're a fantastic group, link with the ladies and send a referral form, and they will provide clothing then for the whole family. And that's across RCT, and that's been good too.
That's excellent.
Especially for parents, and obviously the food banks, etc.
Thank
And
you.
if I can just mention there, I know Gav said about the reward shop has been fantastic, I got to say, in terms of constantly reinforcing the positivities, if that makes sense. But the Christmas hotspot, if you like, this was something that we identified probably 2 or 3 years ago. When we talk about it was always an issue, but post-COVID we saw significant drops. We were down to like 70% for the 2 or 3 week period prior to Christmas 2 years ago. So that's when, as Gav said, we targeted, because of our data, because of our analysis of data, we knew that the Christmas period was our challenge, if you like. And if we could manage that effectively and raise the profile there, then we had a better chance of increasing attendance. So as Gav said, we've had numerous prizes in terms of tellies. We've had bikes donated, etc. as well. And over a 2-year period now, we've improved 10% in that period, which is huge, really. Do you know what I mean? It's gone from 77% to 87% in that Christmas period, which is massive, and doesn't give us the dip that we've got to recover from, if that makes sense. So yeah, and that's all about the guys identifying those trends and then us forging those relationships, I suppose, with the partners. But the amount of profile that gets over on social media, etc. as well, during that Christmas period is huge. And we've got Christmas hampers then, which we deliver to our most vulnerable pupils as a part of that challenge then as well. And it's been a really, really positive experience, whereas previously with regards to attendance, those 3 weeks leading up to Christmas have been a challenge. It's been a real positive experience over the last couple of years. And this year in particular, as I've said, we were 87%, which is a 10% improvement based on that time last year, which is massive, really, with regards to attendance.
Absolutely.
Just to add to that, we identified a couple of areas. Food poverty we've identified considerably, and obviously uniform. Louise has mentioned it, but within the wellbeing office, we've literally got cupboards and cupboards of uniform now that if I'm being honest, we just give the pupils the uniform. So it's not a barrier to learning, it's not a barrier to coming into school. The other side to that, we mentioned the reward shop on having to adapt and change. Our biggest seller in our reward shop is food, cereal bars, and we've identified that, and we've had to stock up more on those. And then linked to that then is, luckily enough, we've got a partnership with Sgwrs at the moment where they're providing fruits and so on. So that's available for the pupils throughout the school. But our breakfast club as well. We've got a breakfast club open, not just to specific pupils, the vulnerable pupils. We've got a breakfast club that runs from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8:35 to all pupils. And again, these are just trying to break down any barriers to learning as much as we can, because we've identified what could be the trigger points. And yeah, hopefully all of these things we're mentioning are obviously helping us show the success we're achieving at the moment.
Definitely, they all make a contribution, don't they?
And as a promotion for our partners, Greg sponsor the Breakfast Club, and Tesco's provide us with the fruit and veg. So I'm not on a percentage on us, but yeah, just in case we can get any publicity for our partners as well.
Thank you for that. Could I just ask you about how you've brought along your governing body with regards to, them understanding what you're doing, and do you obviously report to them the successes regularly? I just wondered how you've gone about that, Nathan.
Yeah, so absolutely, especially if I'm honest. So at the time of me arriving in the school, we were with Central South. We were a school in enhanced support, and there were 3 reasons for that at that point in time. It was attainment, but it was attendance and behaviour as well, exclusions. So very quickly, the attainment element was withdrawn. But up until this year, we've still been in enhanced support with regards to attendance and reducing exclusions behaviour. So as part of every full governing body meeting, we have a lengthy discussion. There is an actual report produced, which Nicola produces all the data for with regards to attendance, and that's drilling down in terms of how many letter ones we've sent, how many letter twos, how many home visits the Louise has done. It's all that data. That is also communicated to the pupil and community, the committee meetings as well. But once a term, we've been having meetings that my chair of governors and vice chair of governors attends with local authority and Central South colleagues as well. And a big factor of that has been, what are we doing to improve attendance and to reduce exclusions as well. So there's been a huge support from a governing body point of view, and definitely they've been kept abreast with everything that we've been doing as well. Luckily, because of the improvements we made last year, attendance was removed from our enhanced support journey, and obviously we've continued on that journey then this year as well. And as a result of a very, very positive Estin inspection and the improvements that we're making as well, we have now been removed from enhanced support for everything. So I think and I go back to what I said at the beginning. We're talking about attendance here, but the school improvement journey is so interlinked between behaviour in terms of attendance and learning and teaching, etc. If you haven't got one, you haven't got the other. So as much as this is about attendance specifically, and there are specific strategies we've got, it's about that whole school improvement and self-evaluation cycle, I think is absolutely key as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nathan. And any successful strategy will need monitoring and evaluating. So we'd really like to get a flavour again of how you've had that sort of unrelenting focus on improvement and overcoming any barriers to success.
I guess the procedures that we follow, this is a kind of a normal fortnightly thing that we do. We meet with heads, myself and Gavin, one of the wellbeing ladies. We'll meet with heads year. We'll look at every child's attendance in that year group under 88%. We constantly look at that threshold figure. We change that. We up that, from last year. So we started interventions slightly earlier then, raising expectations then. So under 88%, we will start to look at everyone, and that's done fortnightly. So we'll identify those who will have an initial letter just to say, look, this is your attendance. We expect it to be higher than this. If you need any support, that kind of a letter that will go out. We also look at those eligible for a letter 2, who has not really improved since that initial first letter. So we invite parents in for a meeting then at that point. And that is sometimes parents are unable to come in for a meeting, so we'll have a telephone conversation, but it'll invite them, at that point to just make contact. If you can't make the meeting, we can discuss this over the phone. But I also make it really clear at that point that following that letter or that appointment, I'm going to start authorising the children's attendance without some evidence. So we are starting to get more and more evidence coming in, even if it's for a orthodontist appointment or whatever it may be. We get in evidence for some antibiotics from the doctors. We challenging parents on, okay, we understand your child's not feeling very well for the 9th time maybe this year, so it's we need a little bit more from you. So we follow that. Following that, then we do look at fixed penalty notices. So and they have a 50% success rate. We kind of looked at how effective these actually are, because we're not here to make families poorer. So why we never put in a fixed penalty notice, as in there's always a monitoring period, so for the chance for that child to improve their attendance over 15 days. We never fine on holidays. Obviously, we take a big hit. Our attendance takes a big hit from families due to poverty and how expensive family holidays are in the peak times. They do often choose to take their children out to school, and that is kind of understandable, but it's a really difficult one for us. But we don't fine on that. So we put it in looking at a child's whole attendance in general, but we would issue a fixed penalty notice with a monitoring period, and we found that for over 50% of the children, will improve through that period, and therefore there's no fining or anything then. But I'm quite consistent with that. Like, for example, since September, I've sent out 134 initial letter ones, 156 letter twos, which have been invites for parents to come in. And what else have we got? We've got a fixed penalty notice. We've applied for 62 fixed penalty notices since September as well. We send out WRVs. They've done every week. That's the wellbeing response visits carried out by AWS. So there's been 250 of those sent with the staff have gone out. And then obviously following a fixed penalty notice, then we look at opening that child up to the attendance and wellbeing service. So that is the graduated response. So since September, we've had 43 children open to the attendance and wellbeing service, many of which have improved their attendance again, being obviously closely monitored by the attendance and wellbeing service, not resulting in court action. Some have, but a lot of them have improved and closed, which is what we want to see. Currently, we've got 17 children being monitored now by the attendance and wellbeing service, and it's those. That is kind of my job. And there's that consistent approach. There are barriers. There's always some barriers, but if you can talk about them, Sue.
It's worth mentioning the accountability we've talked about. You can tell by the way Nicola's talking in terms of rigorous. The paperwork is there, the documents there, but it's also linked to line management. You know, we make heads of year accountable our well-being. Who's got specific jobs to do every fortnight with targeted pupils, and obviously that's not necessarily always attendance, but it could be behaviour, well-being, and it's all interlinked. So I think for us, our monitoring systems and our records are tip top, because the other side of this is there's been jokes made within the local authorities how much we use My Concern. I know My Concern potentially shouldn't be used for safeguarding, but we use it personally as a way of logging all communication with parents. Every phone call conversation we've had is there. So when it comes to a head of year or Louise or myself, we go into My Concern and we can see any records, any tracks then, or anything that's been happened, implemented action plans, any problems, any issues. So our records are really, really detailed, and linked to that is, again, there's a general format in most of these letter 2 type meetings there where we use class charts. We'll take a laptop, we'll take the printouts, and we can show the whole process in terms of behaviour, attendance, well-being, and so on. It's all linked. So class charts has been a powerful tool for us as well to show, because some of the parents and guardians, you'd probably guess, they're unaware of what their child is doing in school, the fact they might be truant in lessons, the fact that they're always late. And it's that information, that communication, that, you know, the data, combining it all to give an holistic approach and showing everything that's going on. And again, it just ties in everything where we're at.
And I think as a team, the communication between us all is really good as well. Like Nick and I work really closely because there's our Bible there. So it's got pride and place in the office, you know. So if she's in a meeting or whatever, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to pinch that because I can take details from there. If I'm following something up, putting a referral in, signposting somebody elsewhere, everything's there, you know. So it's consistent with us all. It works, you know.
And the one thing I would say there, Emma, is I think personally, and I don't know if people would disagree who would listening to this potentially, but I think attendance is possibly the hardest one to evidence what actually has the impact, because it's almost like, and I say this, I don't say this as in haphazardly, but it's a bit of a pebble dash effect. You've got so many different things happening, and rightly so, and you hope it's going to have an impact. But what we have done, I would say, is over the last couple of years in particular, is drill down. So, for example, I'll regularly ask Nicola, do we know what percentage of how many pupils have improved their attendance after the letter 1? How many pupils have improved attendance after the letter 2 during an FPN? So we've got that information to know that what we are doing is having an impact. You know, we run a significant number of interventions, and we will have entry and exit requirements for those interventions, and we'll have impact reports on those interventions as well. That could be behaviour, that could be attendance. So what is the attendance at the start? What's the attendance at the end? Has it had an impact? If it's not, then why are we doing it? If it has, then great, we'll carry it on and we'll roll it out. So I think we become far more evaluative in terms of us having data to back up then some of the things. Like I said about those, we know that Christmas period initiative has put a 10% increase on, but we also know that the graduated response that Nicola has put in place, that would have had an impact on that as well. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's a combination of a lot of things, but we've got so little resources at such a crucial period of time that we have to know what has the impact and what doesn't, because otherwise we are wasting resource, or the little resource we've got then, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I was just going to add, in addition to what Nathan was saying, I've got to do a family engagement term leave report as well. So I do case studies on that as well about the pupil, and I try to break down the attendance from what they were last year and in a termly, sectioned off termly to what they are now. But I try to add in then if attendance has perhaps dropped for any reason, and we know the reason why, just to make note of that and say this has happened because of, this has happened because of. But then working alongside T-Cutch, which is our nurture provision, I take, like Sean and I, we populate our graduated response for that with attendance figures, etc., where they are, whether they've had a Boxall profile, one-page profile, all that sort of stuff. So I take a snapshot of their attendance percentages as well, and just to see if there's any improvement there. There's not always. There isn't always going to be. They're either going to stay the same, and sometimes you will have a drop, but some of them will have a massive increase as well, and that's good to see, because some days you could think, oh God, are we getting anywhere? But when you see the figures, yeah, you are. It's yeah.
To add to it, looking at the school calendar, we've looked at the school calendar as well about certain things, certain initiatives. Do trips necessarily work at Christmas time or summertime? Does that have an impact? Because it can work both ways. It can improve attendance to a certain degree, but for some pupils, they won't want to come in because the poverty proofing element, they can't afford to go on the trip anyway. And linked to that, as a school now, generally, we don't run non-school uniform days, because for us as a school, that doesn't work. It actually does cause more problems. So I think there's a massive element of poverty proofing we do across the school. We're also looking at the school calendar now, at looking at key dates, when we should put mock exams on, when assessments should take place, and so on.
Thank you.
And I think, going back to what Louise said, we are talking about, when you're talking about the interventions and the types of families and pupils that Louise is talking with, there are some huge complex needs there, and at any point in time there's significant trauma for some of these pupils. You know what I mean? So just because the data element doesn't necessarily say it's been successful, that doesn't tell the picture with a lot of the pupils and a lot of the families we're talking about. When we're talking about the pupils that need that extra nurture, that extra support, it's not just about data, it's about the wider information that we've got and the improvements we can see from a mental health and a well-being point of view as well. So there are a number of facets to the support mechanisms and the interventions that we put in place. So the data isn't always the only picture then.
Yeah, I think as I say, that's really, as you say, that's really, really important, that you have to take that whole sort of picture rather than just focusing on one particular sort of facet. So thank you for that. And finally, looking at celebrating the achievements that you've had at Ferndale, looking at those incremental gains and successes, the impact on pupils, both academic and well-being impact, and also about how those pupils have been supported to engage and participate fully in school life.
I think one of the major elements has been social media. We've done a huge amount. Our social media on Facebook in particular is massive in terms of the school promoting pupil success, school success, but also any initiatives. We've touched upon it already. Christmas time, we broadcast what the competition is in relation to attendance, and that means we get a buy-in then from the community. And as we mentioned, the community end up donating prizes towards it, but they're aware of what we're trying to achieve. We've put things like work experience on there. We've promoted our Year 10 work experience in the summer term already on social media to try and get a buy-in from the community to make them aware. So staff panto at Christmas time went down well, yeah. So
that massively improves attendance. Everyone wants to see the head of year dressed as a lady, or doing whatever, singing random songs, or our head teacher doing something.
Well-being day, didn't we, with all the fruit and all the treats and everything for everybody to enjoy. We had a Christmas buffet, didn't we? We all brought a plate in, everybody met there.
But it is promoting our success, and we've done that a lot through social media. But if I'm being honest, there's a lot of informal stuff that goes on in terms of conversations that members of staff have with pupils to say, oh, well done, your attendance is up, you're doing this, and some discreet phone calls going home to say you've made a massive improvement. You know, you don't need a chocolate egg or a card to say well done. Some of our parents, when we have a phone call, we say they've done really well. They're like, oh, thank you for phoning. I'm used to just having negative phone calls. And those small things make a massive difference to some of our parents who potentially don't buy into school life or things like that. So
I mean, even the visual sort of putting the positive points on at the end of the week, if a good week has been, you know, had in school, they love it, you know.
And I think it is that for me, it's about that drip feed. It's not about the one big, as much as, you know, we talked about the Christmas and that was fantastic and those images were everywhere. It's that constant positive reinforcement, I suppose. And Gav's alluded to, attendance is integral to our reward system. So the pupils can see that going on every single day, and then weekly and monthly, etc. Parents have got access to that on class charts with regards to that as well. I think we've really upped the profile with regards to me telling staff in terms of briefings and things like that, where we're at with attendance. And so it's constantly, so it's not just the team you see in front of you's responsibility. Attendance is everybody's responsibility, and we've still got a job to do there, I think, with regards to form tutors and other members of staff. But the more high profile we make attendance for everybody, the more successful we're going to be. There are regular assemblies with regards to pupil attendance. That's the celebration element. That's educational in terms of telling them about the benefits of attendance and the link to attainment with regards to attendance as well. So as much as you get that targeted sort of widespread media splash, if you like, I think it's the constant drip feeding day to day, week on week, month on month. That's the bit, I think, where the profile really and the culture changes, if you like. You don't get a culture change just by that Christmas initiative. You get a culture change by making it part of everybody's living experiences on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis. And I think that's the journey I think we're on at the moment, making sure that there's constant positive reinforcement about attendance, about behaviour, and again going back to how closely that is interlinked with everybody else, with everything else then as well.
Thank you, Nathan.
The only small point I'd say is just the restorative elements, staff, in terms of the buy-in that we've had. You know, relationships do break down sometimes with some pupils, and I think parents and guardians and pupils now understand to try and get pupils back into certain lessons, back into school, that we've arranged meetings then to take place with the members of staff so the pupil can discuss their views, how they feel within the lesson. And again, I've mentioned it a number of times now, but it's just breaking down those barriers so that there isn't any barriers to a pupil returning to the lesson or to school. So we've had a number of inset staff training that reinforces it, you know, the restorative nature of what we do across the school as well, which again is something else that is quite strong with it across the school.
Thank you. Anything from anybody else?
I think what I'd like to add is that I would be at pains to say that we are not saying that we've cracked it. Far from it. I think we're on a journey. We started at a very, very low starting point post-COVID. We've made, I would say, significant improvements, but 87.7%, as positive as that is in terms of where we've been, is not where we want to be. So and I don't like the word journey, but I suppose we are on a continuum. And I as a head teacher, I would be at pains to stress about how hard the well-being, the attendance team, the people in front of you work, not only in terms of this podcast, but on a day-to-day, hour-by-hour basis. It is absolutely relentless. I think attendance is probably the most relentless aspect of anything to do with school and school improvement, and it does take literally day on day, week on week, month on month, hour on hour, almost that focus on those small marginal gains, and that's what the team in front of you have done. They've worked incredibly hard over a 4-year period now, really. And as I've said, we've made, as far as I'm concerned, significant improvements, but we've got further improvements to go, and we are aware of that. We are constantly evaluating and monitoring where we're at. But when I think back to COVID, one of the biggest issues we had was potentially in-school truancy. So it was some kids would come, we had the school refusers, but we had a certain element then, and quite a significant element of pupils who had been out of school for a period of time and didn't have rules and routines, etc. So they were coming to school but refusing to do anything we asked them to do. And that was having a huge impact on their attendance and our attendance as well, because we never knew where they were. we haven't cracked out, but we're significantly better in terms of that at the moment as well. So I think all of those things, and going back to the way in which learning and teaching, attendance, behaviour, management is all interlinked in terms of that school improvement journey, I think is key. So we're not saying we're the finished article. The team work incredibly hard and made huge improvements, but we know we've got a journey to go. But if we are willing to share our journey, and or if anybody wants to come and speak to us, we're more than happy to talk to anybody as well.
Thank you, Nathan. And I think you've been really honest and open, and I think that makes you all the more relatable, because I think other schools across the region will relate to this. As you say, you're not the finished article, and you don't profess to be. But if you can support other schools, if they want to get in touch, on their own respective journeys, as we say, that would be really, really good. So thank you. I think it makes you really relatable.
Diolch am wrando ar y benod hon o Sgwrs. Cofiwch ein dilyn ar Twitter a Facebook, tanysgrifio ein sianel YouTube, ymuno yn cymunedau ar ein gwefan a darllen ein bwletin ysgolion wythnosol am y newyddion diweddaraf. Thanks for listening to this episode of Sgwrs. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook, subscribe to our YouTube channel, join our online communities via our website, and read our weekly school bulletin for the latest news. Hwyl am y tro. Bye for now.